Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the iAlpha project. Today I'm actually want to talk about men and beauty. Those two words mixed together, right? You never hear that. But to explain more, I've got Jeff Doidge here with us today. Hi Jeff.
G'day, mate. How are you, buddy?
Very well, thank you.
Good to see you.
So just for our viewers, because we've known each other a fair few years, I'd say 10 plus years at least.
Yeah, it's got to be, I think, probably in the early 2000s when we met. So this is back at the supplement den when I
1999, I think, when I first completed.
Yeah, I opened that in May of 2002.
Oh, there you go.
Which is funny because Simon Rees opened ASN in May 2002.
Wow, there you go.
We both opened our stores about the same time.
And TST back then, took the world by storm. At least the local area, you guys grew from one little shop, then you had the whole level out.
Yeah, we were actually underneath Springwood Gym there. We were inside it. Literally, it was a discontinued storeroom. It was probably about 3.5 meters wide and about 8 meters long. And just put some melamine boarding in there. My wife and I, Tony, we got married in 1998. I've always been interested in health and wellness, and had worked for Telstra as a subsidiary registered project manager. My boss took all the glory for the success that I got, and that led to the entrepreneurial seizure, as they say. So I decided, I didn't want to work for someone else, slog my guts out, and then them get all the glory. And so using a few skills that I had, I ended up promoting a company sort of in the cattle industry, raising some capital for that company. And they said, man, you're good at selling. Why don't you represent our brand because you're passionate about it, which was in the cattle industry. And it was a really cool device over in Ireland. Anyway, foot and mouth hit, came back to Australia destitute again, had nothing, literally looking at bankruptcy papers on the table, and went, what am I passionate about? I love health. I love wellness. I love the gym. Let's open a supplement store. And so that happened in May of 2002. And I think very, very soon after, that's where we met.
Where we first met. And I remember when I first went into the store, because most places you go to, they sell you a product.
Yeah.
But for you and your team was the constant service.
Yeah.
Even if I walked in there, you guys would spend 30 to 45 minutes with me, give me 100% knowledge, and I would leave maybe with one product.
Yeah.
Because you had this mentality, which was about servicing the people, not selling a product.
100%.
And there wasn't anything. It was about what's right for you.
Man, you've got a good memory.
Yeah.
And look, the funny thing is again, I think in terms of business, you can see people that obviously chase the dollars, and I'm not saying necessarily that's wrong, but if it's your only focus. But it's like, did you ever see that movie with Robin Williams about the Gesundheit clinic? And it was the doctor, and he said, if you treat the disease, you win some, you lose some. But if you treat people, you always win.
Patch Adams.
Yes,
right?
that's exactly right.
Absolutely.
So it's that kind of philosophy in terms of, if you serve people, you never lose. And so if you put people as your primary function, and you're adding value, then you'll be successful. And it's a win-win. It doesn't have to be a win-loser. It doesn't have to be really transactional. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's the philosophy, I guess, that I've always had. And tried to obviously abide by. And it doesn't mean, and again, if you're providing value, whether it's a personal trainer, whether it's a supplement store, whether it's a product, whether it's advice, it's whatever, if you're providing really, really great value, then you derive value from it, as does the other person. And so that's obviously how you can...
It creates a sense of purpose. It just keeps you driving more and more.
Yeah.
And I remember back then, even your team and the people you brought on, you see them evolve. And obviously, been so many years, I still remember some of the guys you had, Sarah, cousin, and they all now evolved into their own right.
Yeah.
And successful human beings.
Dan, who worked for me, he went over and worked for, I think, ESPN now. He's doing commentary on American rugby.
Wow.
He went into the medical industry. It's funny, I guess, since 2002. So we're talking like 22 years ago. And it's like,
and when I look at that, it's really, I had an old boss, Phil Foster, who ran Good Life, and he was the Queensland State Director for Fitness Direction. And I worked with him for a few years. He's passed away now, God rest his soul. But this man was not only unique in what he did, every single one of his trainers went on to become exceptional people in their own right and successful. Yeah. So when it comes to running a business, so I think people forget that the team they're involved in is also part of their duty of responsibility into evolving those people with knowledge and self-awareness so that they can follow their own passions, right? Does that, when you had this team with these people that grow and then develop more, so that you're not just a manager trying to hit the target, you're also a manager trying to motivate and inspire people to become more?
Yeah, 100%. And look, I think it comes down to one of the things I actually involve a lot now, Pedro, and I know that you're very much into the psychology and understanding people. Something I didn't know back then that I wish I had have known, and I use a lot more now, is using sort of the Myers-Briggs. And I'm going somewhere with this, right?
Yes.
But Myers-Briggs, I think, is fantastic in terms of getting people and equipping them to do what they're really good at. And it's funny, like there's absolutely a great idea of being able to understand and comprehend your weaknesses. And I'm always of the philosophy that if you build a great team, so long as you acknowledge them, but your team carries you in your areas of weakness, then, and everybody's working in those areas where they're really good, then you create a high dynamic team that's interrelated, but actually is incredibly effective.
Yes.
So in terms of back then, we used to hire for character, always hire for character. Yeah. Because if we had good people who had good work ethic and were, honest and look, a few of them slipped under the radar. Yeah. And look, this is the thing that my wife's criticism of me, and fairly so as well too, is that I was overly optimistic. And a lot of people go, no, it's always good to be overly optimistic, but sometimes you need to be reality, because being overly optimistic, I'd hire people, I'd see the potential, but their alignment to that potential or what they wanted was so I'd see the best in people, but they were going off in a different direction.
I'm very guilty of that.
Which is again, it's an endearing trait, but it leaves you open to get blindsided. And it also, sometimes you're trying to push a square peg into a round hole, actually seeing for people for who they are. Yes, seeing the potential, but are they aligned to achieve that? Because ultimately life is about enjoyment. And I think, Gary Vaynerchuk's saying this a lot at the moment. If you're just focused on the dollar, I was actually having a conversation with Bradley Martin. Do you know that guy?
Yeah.
So I was over in the US, and sorry, man, I'm flipping.
No. This is the whole idea.
And we were over at the Olympia, and I remember meeting him. He was actually in the stand next to us when we were with ATP Science. And I'm not a huge social media guy. Like I did the podcast and everything, but like that wasn't really sort of like my thing. Yeah. Like even now, like Tony laughs at me because I'm like, I'm pretty antiquated, man. Like, I'm not really great, but I remember meeting him, and my team was really enamored with him, and I knew who he was, obviously. And I remember going up to him, and he was talking, man, just the amount of people that was just swarming him the whole time. Anyway, we got a break afterwards, and we were having he was having a drink of water. Just came up to us. I said, man, what's it like? And he's like, oh, I said, went into the spiel. Oh, dude. I said, no. I said, man, like seriously, no one's around. What's it like? And he goes, it's hard work, man. It is like, he picked up his phone. He goes, this thing is a prison. He goes, the time, the energy, the focus that I have to do it. And I think where he started off on, obviously, was, well, he's become one of the most successful guys, but he paid the price to get there.
Yes.
And I think sometimes you've got to look at what you're doing and then look at your lifestyle and say, I'm all for short-term sacrifice maybe of the immediate, how should I say this? Sometimes you've got to make sacrifices for the longer term, but you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and there's a destination. Yep. If that sacrifices, you're sacrificing everything. You're sacrificing all the time. And that just is a perpetual on a wheel. Like you never get to that point where you can then step back and enjoy life a little bit more. Mm-hmm. That's where I look at that sort of stuff with Gary Vaynerchuk, who says, sometimes we need to redefine what success looks like. And that doesn't mean you should ever give up on your goals. But if it's a perpetual wheel where you're miserable all of the time, you're the captain of your soul.
Absolutely.
You have the ability to go, hang on a minute, do I need to readjust? Because as we were just saying before, 22 years ago, man, that went like that.
It does.
Are you focused on your goals, but at the same time still smelling roses?
Absolutely.
Are you enjoying life? Because So anyway, I went off with a bit of a tangent.
No, I love that, because that actually leads directly into what we were going to talk about as well. But we'll get to that. What you're talking about as far as the Slight Edge, the book, is talking about the consistent little things that you do in order to reach your goal. Because many things, people want the quick fix, the quick break, and the quicker you make it, the quicker you lose it. But it's the very basic steps that we do every day through consistency that then will actually it's compounded on itself. And in the book, he uses the example of a father gives two sons an options. One is like, you can have $1 million each, or I've got a box here and you put a penny in. The longer I keep the box, every day the penny doubles. Yeah. your choice. One son picked $1 million, invested it, tried to make a business. By the end of the first year and a half, he was in debt.
Yes.
Because about all the people he had to hire, all the directors, all the infrastructure. So he was making money, but he was in debt. The other one decided to keep the money.
Yeah.
And obviously compound, first day, 1 penny, second day, 2, 4, 6 onwards. By the end of it, he had over $10 million.
Yeah.
And the purpose of the story is to illustrate how the small things compounded over time.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to say no to something and not deal with the results because the consequences are later.
Yeah.
Such as, no, it's just a hamburger, I'll eat it today. But if you do that every day over 10 years, you have your salad and chicken and a healthy food. And I'm not saying that that's other options, but if you choose healthier options, that again compounded over time. So it's the simple little things that we'll later get on, especially with some of the stuff that I'm doing. But
I think I like to call that the delayed onset of gratification.
Exactly.
So like when we started the supplement den, we're in this tiny little den, and I was working, and that's why we called it the supplement den. TST standard for the den, because it was a den. And my friends used to come and see me, and they were worried. They were, man, you're working long hours for hardly any money. You're going to burn yourself out. And it was good advice, because I had to be mindful to go and have that joy, go and spend that time with Tony, go and enjoy life as well too. But it was like building a great physique, and if you've got something in mind in terms of competition, or if it's just a lifestyle thing or what have you, it's that focus on obviously why you're doing it and what the result is. And is that result worth the effort that you're putting in? And if it's a noble goal, obviously it is. Yeah. So I think that's that balanced with that. If you're dieting all the time,
exactly,
to be able to then have that little bit of release without then obviously that becoming a handbrake to obviously what you're trying to achieve.
Exactly.
Same thing in business, man. I mean, I think the two things go hand in hand.
Well, and that's I often use people that compete is they diet for like 12 to 20 weeks, really, really hard. They do the show and then they just go and splurge.
Blow out.
But what you do when you do a business, like you said, you spend 6 months hard grinding, 15-hour days, not getting a single dollar, getting ready for opening day. You have opening day, everyone shows up. But come the next day, what do?
Yeah.
Show up to work.
Yeah.
In more energy and better place than you did the prep, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in bodybuilding, I'm like, they're missing that story. Yeah. Everyone does the right yards, they do the show, but the real work starts the day after the show.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? The same as in business.
Same as a black belt, right? How many black belts did you see get the black belt and then they quit? Because they feel like that was the end goal and then that's it, they're done.
I was very
12-week challenges, same thing. Get there, done, I've done that, and then it's all gone again.
When I first became a black belt, our chief instructor congratulated us, gave us a hug and said, you now have the tools to start to train.
That's it.
Meaning up until now, all you were doing was learning which tools to use. Now you learn how to use those tools as a black belt.
Yeah.
It's really the beginning. It's not the end.
Yeah, yeah. Good.
And when you look at like what you're talking about with people, it's like, I'm like you, we fall in love with the potential.
Mm.
And then it's like a catch-22 because we want to keep that person driving to the potential we see.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's at our own detriment, the biggest mistake isn't who we hire, it's who we don't fire.
Yeah.
And it's understanding that it's not that I don't see your potential, you have it, but right now you're limiting my potential.
Oh, man.
So I'm going to have to let you go so that I don't release mine.
And dude, that's a big one. I mean, I think it was Trump and out of the deal said hire slowly, fire quickly, right? Because if you recognize that there's no alignment or if, you got things wrong. And I tell you, man, like of all the lessons that I've probably learned over the last 20 years, but really a lot over the last probably 4 years is the importance of alignment of the team, alignment of the goals, and conformity and unity are two different things. That's one of my favorite sayings, is that you don't all have to be exactly the same, but you have to, you don't have to conform, but you have to have a unified goal.
You have to have a mission statement.
So, man, I'm terrible at it, which is why I now go back to relying on a system as well as obviously intuition in terms of hiring people around the Myers-Briggs and making sure that I'm not projecting what I want that person to be in the team. And then I'm thinking, man, this makes a lot of sense because this is my goal.
Yeah.
And then going, I don't really value your goal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
But this is the problem if you try and, all in water, doesn't mix,
No. And so with TSD and that team, it obviously evolved you into bigger things too.
Yeah, well, TSD was fun, man. And I mean, even talking to Grant Mayo the other day, because when he and Simon had busted up, he had a 50-kilometer radius from the, I think it was Southport or Ashmore, I forget which store. And so he literally, he told me, he drew a circle on the map. People may already know this, I don't know.
I haven't heard this
He
before.
drew a circle on the map, and he went, right, I can't open a store within 50 kilometers. And so basically the closest one was Underwood. And what, Grant doesn't mind me saying this, I'm not talking out of school, but his idea, it's too late now anyway, he's got stores everywhere, but his idea was to get close to Bunnings. Good infrastructure, good roads, you know, all that sort of stuff, good population size. And so he went Underwood, you know, because there was, I think there was BBC there. And so he opened up there. And again, I don't think I'm talking out of turn here. I don't think I'm exaggerating. We beat him up pretty bad. He nearly failed. And so then he obviously became the master at opening more stores and, you know, obviously became an absolute, juggernaut. But for me, I actually stole one of his better staffs there who came over and worked for me. And so there was a lot of skullduggery going on. But I think in terms of the whole industry back then, it was cowboy days. It was people finding new things.
But you see, nowadays we see a little bit more resistant to that. But when I look and listen to those stories, I would even argue that had he not made the challenge with you, he would not have found a deviation in his strength to expand all these stores.
I'll take credit for Nutrition Warehouse. I mean, like obviously he was determined, and he had some real setbacks as well too in terms of.
But once he reached his block, he didn't stop. Right? He continued, and he found other alternatives.
So for me as well too, like what we did is we created a single store, and we were really focused on obviously building something online. So, you know, we did that well. Obviously, Grant then created like this whole network of stores, as ASN did. I mean, obviously, some other guys out in the market are doing absolutely brilliant in that area as well too. But for us, it was then changing dynamics, because I still remember looking at it and going, I had a few setbacks, had a few things that happened to us as well too in terms of people, vision, alignment, you know, things like that, naivety. Like at the end of the day, if you're the boss, the buck stops with you.
Exactly.
Regardless of it's who you choose to do business with, right? Like, and who you choose, whether it's clients that you're bringing on or whether it's the decisions that you're making, who you align yourself with. And we hear this all the time as well too, you know, show me the closest 5 people that you do business with, and it will tell you a lot about how they mold and influence your character, not just the other way as well.
100%.
So anyway, so long story short, Tony and I took a step back and went, you know, there's a scratch that I'm itching here with TSD, and that is the ability to really craft products that we really, really like. And look, I'm not saying that there weren't some good products out there. There were, but there was a lot of stuff out there where we just went, man, it's pretty hollow. Like there's not a lot of integrity behind it.
There's not much substance behind it.
Yeah. So that's obviously where we then took a step back and then started focusing on ATP. Yeah.
Which went fucking crazy, right?
Lots of things all culminating at the same time. Like one of my absolute favorite books is Who Moved My Cheese.
I haven't heard that.
You can probably read it in an afternoon, and basically it's about scratch and sniff and hem and haw. Scratch and sniff for a couple of mice, hem and haw a couple of people. And the moral of the story for the book, I mean, you should read it because literally it's really small. It's got some cool things. Is that some things change, some things never change, but it's the things that change where people get into trouble. Kodak, Blockbuster. Like we know the things, you know, obviously where technology changes. I mean, Blockbuster story about them even turning down Netflix for $50 million, right? And not actually seeing the writing on the wall. Right?
Even Gary Vee owns that he should have invested in Uber.
Yeah. And you know that Uber wasn't even the first?
Yeah.
Do you know it was Magic Cabs? Was actually the people that had that first. Yeah. So in terms of obviously having a good idea is part of it, but then obviously adapting and obviously making sure that it's relevant and it communicates. So for us as well too, with regards to, because I'm talking to other friends in the industry, people starting brands, and there've been some great companies that have come out that have just nailed it recently. I mean, like you can see some of these brands that have sort of come out of nowhere because of being able to find a way to resonate and communicate with an audience that they find meaningful and they're adding value, right? Like I even love this with the Prime example, the Prime drinks that came out with Logan Paul.
Yeah.
If you look at the product, it's terrible, right? But people aren't buying it for the ingredients that's in there. Yeah. They're buying it because they want to be associated with Logan Paul. They want to be part of that group, that crowd. I mean, Red Bull obviously did it by aspiring to noble motives with that. So people feel an identity when they take a product like that, right? But anyway, I'm digressing a little bit.
I actually agree with that quite a bit because even when ATP first started, and then I met Matt Legg, which I call the crazy scientist.
Brilliant.
I mean, the dude's like next level, and his awareness of knowledge. And I even know with your sponsored athletes, that they would do tests, and then Matt would actually put compounds together specifically for them and their blood type and what they needed. Yep. Takes it to a whole new other level. But there is one thing, like you did, is that you had an amazing team with ATP. I mean, Mike Galley himself was just incredible. And the dude's a legend. not only as a man, but as an athlete. So when you've got
6 times Mr. Australia, and don't forget, I always say, and also 1 time Mr. Southpaw.
Yes,
He was asked about
well,
that. He's good, man.
do
do you know the thing about Mick, and I was funny is thinking about it, and also Matt as well too, is that at that time ATP Science had, and this is the whole thing about coming back to that Jesus move, people try and sometimes, what was the success? Why did it work so well? Man, it was hard work. It was the right timing, right positioning. It was a bit of luck. It was kind of everything worked together for us at that time.
Yeah.
Ultimately, at the other end, we had a lot of stuff that worked all against us all at the same time.
Yeah.
But in terms of Matt was just working hard, doing his formulations. Really cared about the integrity of the product, because he'd come from companies where they said, here's how much money you can spend on the formulation. Here's what it does. Go away and do it. And when we started working together, we said, man, here's a problem. What can we do? And it's like, what do you mean? It's like, let's take off, let's address things in completely new ways. Let's look at the science. Let's look at actually how we can do these things, which was controversial, but we got results, right? Same thing with Mick Galley as well, too. And you're talking about team. The thing about Mick is that he is one of the, I don't think people actually understand how much I owe Mick Galley to the success of ATP Science and to even my success, because at that time I had an employee, we'll call him Jim. Right? His name's not Jim, but we'll call him Jim. Tony and I hired him to come into TSD. This is right at the time when we were transitioning over to ATP Science. He was really good gift to the gab, and I really love this guy. I mean, he was a nice guy, young family, excellent salesperson, really interpersonal skills like no tomorrow. And so he came on board, and I basically put him as the manager of the store. And while I was kind of ramping up, ATP and sort of getting into all of that, so I was sort of like chasing a few rabbits. And I gave him the keys to the kingdom, and we looked after him in ways I won't even go into, but he had personal problems, family problems, and we helped him out with money, finance, took him with us overseas as well too. Like, he became sort of my key man. Yeah. Anyway, he ended up stealing from us, and it really just blew TSD apart. It was actually probably one of the nails in the coffin of TSD while I was focusing on this other business. And he was really well known, because it's kind of funny, and people's got, Jeff did the podcast on this. I'm actually quite a shy person. I don't like being out in front per se. I like having conversations and then filming it. It's like great, but I'm actually quite a shy person. I don't like crowds. I'm just not that sort of person. Anyway, but he was connected, and he knew everyone. It was Mick Galley. He actually brought Mick Galley on as the first athlete for ATP Science. And man, we were getting, we were the devil, we were evil, we were doing all this sort of stuff. It was kind of like that, what you've seen in the States recently, with throw as much mud as possible and people believe it, right? And because I didn't have the big voice, I thought, man, this is going to just destroy our business before we even get going. It was Mick Galley that actually came out and said, you know what, all that's crap. This is actually not who these people are. He backed us when we were effectively fledgling at ATP Science, had nothing. And he actually said, you know what? No, these people are good people. That's actually not true. And it was because of Mick, because his integrity.
Well, that's it exactly. Mick's he's been around for so long, and to me, his word is his bond, and he also does things he believes in. So because he's such a man of integrity, when he speaks, people trust his word.
Well, I'll tell you something else as well too. So even when, ATP Science had, the divorce and sort of like, sort of the company changed direction a little bit as well too, he never said a bad word about anybody. He never took anyone's side. He was the sort of person that if he was your friend, he was your friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so to everybody in that situation, he remained their friend. And somebody like that is a person of real integrity, because he didn't pick a side per se. I'm not saying he endorsed or agreed with the whole situation. I don't really want to get into that whole detail, but he's a good guy. He's a ridiculous guy. He's the sort of guy which I would trust with my bank account. He's the sort of guy, but he's the sort of guy that I would trust with everything.
Mate, I've got a story. I remember when I first started actually looking at competing seriously, and back then there was a article in Muscle Mag shot by Dallas Olson.
Oh, yeah.
And it's Mick and Logan Robson.
Yeah, right.
Doing arms and training arms. And I literally bought an extra one and had their pictures up on all over my kitchen.
Yeah, wow.
So that I could just see them and be motivated. And I was a tiny man back then.
Yeah, right.
And I remember bumping into them first at Ashmore and being like a little groupie and trying to take a picture with them.
Yeah, right.
And it's ironic because Mick is pretty much my age. He's a little bit younger,
Yeah,
but I feel
50,
like
yeah.
I felt like the 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Fast forward to like 10 years later, I've got Logan Robson as my coach.
Yeah, right.
And I'm standing on stage next to Mick Galley.
Yeah, there you go.
And the two of us were fighting for first place at Queensland's.
Wow.
And he took me by one. And it was like,
and he won. He probably knew the job.
I just said it was his reputation. He didn't deserve it. It was his rep. Dude smoked us, man. And honestly, as good as he looked at Queensland's, a week later at Nationals, completely like a whole other package. The dude's like switched on.
Yeah.
But
and even now as well too. I mean, both of you guys really you look both amazing. But like Mick put up a photo the other day, and all I see is, man, you don't age, man, you look incredible. Yeah. You know what I mean?
So the irony of it is, the very next day, I did a photo shoot for him at the gym.
Right.
And we had a lot of people commenting, "You guys, well, you're still friends, you're still this." And what people don't realize is, on the back end, we were constantly motivating each other.
Yeah, right.
Have you got all your cardio done? How are you feeling? Come on, you get back in there. And to this day is one of the best compliments I've ever had. When Mick won, he came up to me and said, "It's because of you, because you always bring a tight package. And I knew if you were going to be on stage, I'd have to be my best."
Wow.
And to have the guy that was on the posters tell me that.
Yeah, man. That's great.
I mean, wow. But it means so much more, not because of his achievements, but because of the character of the man he is.
Yeah.
You know? And then I know he was a big part of ATP. So moving on to a new thing, one thing that I want to touch with ATP that I liked was also, as much as the marketing and the sales and everything else was there, and people want to buy the product to be associated with people like Mick and etc.
Yeah.
The one thing you guys never deviated from was the quality of your product.
Man, it's funny. The other day, I was going through my phone and talk about pivotal moments in your life where there's make or break. And integrity is doing the right thing even when no one's looking. Like, and it's funny because I actually was doing some recording for Tony on my phone. I was doing a little bit of recording, and the last time I'd used it was 10 years ago. It was literally 2013. Anyway, on there was a message, and it was a phone call that I had recorded with a company in the States called High Tech Pharma. Now, before ATP Science started manufacturing, one of the reasons why we just started manufacturing ourselves is that because we didn't trust the quality of the manufacturer from the companies that we're getting product from. We had this massive, not massive order, but we had all this raw material. Troy was blending it down at International Protein, and then Prestige blending, and then we were taking it off to other places to get encapsulated and all the rest of it. We were getting our powders done over at High Tech Pharma. I think Simon and all that were using those guys back then as well too. They were really good. Anyway, long story short is we'd done a big order of one of our first products, which was called Infrared, which was an electrolyte-based product with adaptogens in it. Anyways, long story short is they'd made the product. It was behind schedule. We'd finally got it. We'd had some orders. And I remember going into the warehouse, and this is at Loganholme, and it had just been delivered, and I was so excited. So I ran over, cut open the box, opened it up, pulled open the lid, and this really strange smell sort of came out of the product, like a bit sweet. And I thought, sickly sweet almost, Anyway, so then I took the product, and one of the things I'm blessed with, which absolutely infuriates my wife, Tony, is that I can count probably on one hand the amount of headaches that I've had in the last 20 years. I don't get headaches. I never get headaches.
Yeah, I'm jealous.
Took this, man, it's horrible. I just don't know why. I just never get headaches. Took this product, shook it up, drank it, and literally within a matter of minutes, I had this like splitting headache. And so I rang Matt, and I went, "Matt, something's wrong." I said, "Mate, the product smells like sweet. It's almost sickly sweet, so a bit of a weird smell." And I took the product and I drank it. And while I couldn't really taste anything, it wasn't that it tasted horrible, but it was just a bit strange. It gave me a headache. And he's like, "Dude," he goes, smart guy, right? He goes, "Do me a favor." He goes, "Pull off the safety, on the top of the thing." Yeah. And he goes, "Put your finger around the inside and tell me if it's sharp." I'm like, "What?" So anyway, I did that. It was sharp. It cut my finger. I said, "What is this?" He goes, "Mate, they have they have overheated the seal onto the top because they use a microwave. It's burnt the plastic. That's released formaldehyde into the product.
Oh, wow.
So we're sitting here going, so we've got like literally pretty much our life savings in infrared, like, because we had 3 products at that time, and like this was the product that we needed. It was behind schedule. And he goes, so he rang up High Tech Pharma, and he goes, the guy's name was Jimmy. He was actually, this is the real Jimmy. This is the real Jimmy, not the fake name that I gave to the guy before. And he goes, okay, Jeff, there's a couple of things we can do. We'll help you. Send it off to a company, aerate it, blend it. That'll help to release some of the formaldehyde, repackage it and sell it. What, I can't do that. And Matt said that might get rid of some of the built up smell, but overall it still has
formaldehyde in it. Yeah.
Anyway, so I remember saying to him, no, that's not. And I remember having a phone call with him for 20 minutes where I was listening to it. And this is what I was actually listening to the other day, where they were big. We had no money. They could have absolutely just said, screw you guys. They're overseas. Do you think we could sue them? Do you think we could do anything? And thankfully, with this conversation, they told us to dump that product and they resent it over and we said so, and everything was fine, right?
That's good.
But at that point, if we had of, one, because we had time pressure, so they had to remake the thing again. We had to last. I was playing poker at this time, keeping the company alive, playing poker. It's this crazy time. And that's what you do when no one's looking. Now, what was really funny is that we actually mentioned it. I can't remember how, and that got out. And then people said, this is a company you can trust. And one of the things that with ATP Science, and look, it's funny because even Tony and I were talking about it the other day, we had commitments to certain things. A lot of people don't care. Like, we only used natural. Now, in Australia, you can have a natural sweetener that's actually got propylene glycol on it. Now, that is not natural, but it's natural. So people will have a product and they go, oh, it's all natural. We actually went to the manufacturers and they said, okay, here's the natural flavoring. And we actually said, great, we want to see the certificate of analysis. We actually want to see the safety data sheet. And it had in here, propylene glycol, which is a carcinogen. So, and it's in a lot of products right now, right? Actually, even Mr Wulf, which we'll get onto, philosophy is trying to remove as many of these forever chemicals and as many of these things as possible, right? We can't be perfect, but we can be better. Anyway, so we removed it. So in terms of one of the things that you say, what's important to you and where's your integrity, and speaking from a place of authenticity, is that whatever was on our label was in our product. And Tony and Matt and myself, that was an absolute core tenet of the business, because if we were ever going to sell something to somebody, we absolutely had to know it was properly dosed. Not only that it was transparent in labeling, but even things like this were removed from it so that we could put our hand on our heart and say it is 100%. And we knew, and this is the thing as well too, we knew that there was a lot of cowboys out there saying that they had X amount of ingredient in there and all the rest of it, and they didn't. And that was a big bugbear. But you know what? You can't focus on them. You just focus on yourself. Because, if you go around throwing stones at everybody going, there's this crap, mine's better for this reason, all the rest of it, then it just leads you down that path of negativity. Right? I
agree completely. The only one that you have to promote is yourself. You can't speak for somebody else's product. And Steve Covey talks about that quite a bit, about functioning from a place of principle, not a place of being a father or a husband or a business owner.
Yeah.
If you're functioning from then, you're looking at your overheads.
Yep.
You've invested your life savings into this. If you're functioning from a place of financial issues, you make decisions that aren't principle based.
That's right. And it's very easy. I mean, this whole thing that, we used to say with forgiveness as well too. And forgiveness doesn't mean, if you forgive someone, it's as much for you as for them, right? In fact, probably more for you, to be honest.
I agree.
Because, holding unforgiveness towards people is like drinking poison and expecting them to die from poisoning. But the whole thing about it is you don't always have to reconcile, but if you forgive that person, if you can see that person not react, and that's something probably over the last couple of years that I've really had to work on, is dealing with that hurt. You have to deal with it. You can't just put a blanket over it and go, it's all done.
Even if you forgive it, it's still there. It's kind of like you just have to accept the reality. It doesn't mean you have to like it.
Well, and a big one, and again, I know that your listeners really love to get into the psychology of, not just business, but relationships, how they view themselves and the world around them as well too. But, I went to a course, and I've spoken about this before, and a lot of people consider it to be cultish, and maybe it is, but I got a lot of truth and a lot of value from it, which was a company called Landmark. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Yep.
And look, it's polarizing. Some people think it's great. Some people, I tell you, some of the best stuff around forgiveness and healing that I'd learned was a practical explanation of how to do that. Look, and as a Christian as well too, obviously, all these things about forgiveness and all the rest of it that we should 100% be practicing. It's easier said than done. None of us are perfect. Sometimes we say things and do things that we shouldn't. But if you bring yourself back into that position where you can actually heal and actually create harmony. But one of the sayings that I had, and this is what I'm getting to with that thing, which was so powerful, which I say to a lot of people, even with my kids in that as well too, is that a lot of people get stuck in past hurts. And I love the saying, they say, don't drag your past into your present and ruin your future.
Absolutely.
Which is such a cool saying. I mean, I know it's a cliche saying, but if you think about it, it's really powerful.
There's a story with two monks, and they're doing a process in their thing, but they cannot talk to anybody. They have a vital signs, but they can't do anything. They cannot affect the outside world. They have to extract themselves. And they were walking in the rain, and there was a lady that was trying to get across the street that was just flooded. So the one monk went up to her, picked her up, carried her over the street, put her down, and continued to walk. Both monks were walking, and probably about 10 blocks later, the other one turns and says, I'm sorry, I just have to ask you, we're not supposed to be interacting with people. So why did you pick her up and help her across the road? And he says, I picked her up and helped her across the road. You've been carrying her for the last 10 blocks.
Yeah, good point.
You know, it's like what's done, it's done. It's there. It's there. Let's move on. And so many times we carry that hurt or that pain, and forgiveness is a way of accepting the reality of that situation.
Yeah.
And it comes with knowledge, self-understanding, as well as limitations, and you learn better for the next step. Yeah. And like you said, taking full accountability that as much as someone's hurt you, you were still the one who put yourself in that position.
That's right. And it's how you react to it, right?
And people think, oh, no, but that's not my fault. And it's like, you can never make any change until you're fully accountable.
Well, the funny thing is at the moment, and again, I don't know if it's topical or if you sort of go into these sorts of things in the podcast, but I mean, even what's happening at the moment with the whole world being against one another, you know, like there's, and it's funny because I had a LinkedIn post the other day, which people talking about, you know, discussions versus arguments versus, you know, and I said, one of the things that I'm finding now is that people are becoming a lot more intolerable. They're saying that they're wounded and they're hurt and they're angry, and so they're lashing out about what somebody says. If it's not meant with hate, then it doesn't need to be responded with hate. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that old saying, I think it was Gandhi that said, an eye for an eye and the whole world goes blind, right? Where you can see that people are just pitted against one another. Everyone's angry. There's no reconciliation. There's no and the whole world is inflamed, as opposed to a kind answer turns away wrath. You know, in terms of the gentleness, gentle spirit. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but in terms of the way that you actually interact with people, everyone seems to be like this
I agree.
all the time.
People only want to talk to those that agree with them, and no one seems to be able to have uncomfortable conversations anymore.
Yeah.
If you have one viewpoint and I have a conflicting viewpoint, the only way that we can understand each other better is by conversing that. But yet people are judging each other for their viewpoints and drawing a blank statement.
Yeah.
Which means you're being ignorant to learning, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, and again, there might be some things that we fundamentally completely disagree on, but so long as we agree to disagree and we still respect one another, then we can go on, right? We don't all have to have the same opinion. I think sometimes people like this conflict in terms of people don't want to be uncomfortable even for a little bit. So it's almost like this fight or flight. Yeah. It's either I'm going to attack you or I'm out of here. There's no, well, let's discuss this. Let's reason about this. You know, and what's really funny is that, you know, I nearly took ATP to the US. We got bodybuilding.com on board. Matt and I were actually there talking to them. We got the products listed. We were building up just before COVID. And I was actually looking to set up in Texas because I love Texas, man. I wanted to move there. And I actually signed 2 leases on properties over there. And there's a point to the story. Anyway, and they got taken from me because the business was booming so much. This is in 2017. And so I went over with the operations manager, John, at the time, and we went to this place in Washington where they had this massive summit, and all the states went there with delegates. And what they were trying to do is they were trying to entice businesses to move to their states, both in the United States and also from other places. And so they'd be like, you'd be talking to people who could go, oh, look, you know, we can, you know, no sales tax for the next 5 years, and we'll give you a grant and we'll help you with this and we'll help you with that. And as I was going around, I still remember the hotel. It was called the Gaylord Hotel. It was actually an amazing place. And when I was there, I was meeting with people from Mississippi and like all over, right? Like Arkansas and we sort of nailed it down to a couple of states. But I went round to most of these places, and I said, because obviously we're looking to move over there, I said, man, things seem to be going really, really well. And I know Trump's just, got in. He's been in for about 18 months, 2 years at that time. And they all sort of like whispered, they lean over and they go, look, yeah, we don't like him, but they go, the country's booming, man. Like the economy is absolutely on fire. And I agree with you as well too. Like you don't have to like the person per se, but I think there's more to it, because I think media, mainstream, which has their own biases as well too, and that's a huge can of worms.
That to me even comes to the fact that people are losing their critical thinking. Common sense seems to be out the door a little bit, which again brings me back to why ATP was important to me, to a lot of people, that I even would recommend the supplement to my clients, because even though people might lack that awareness of like what's important, and they go to ATP because it's popular, because all the top athletes are on it, they don't really register what's in it. But you guys, out of principle, made sure that what they were getting was legitimate products.
100%. And it was an extension. I loved working with athletes. I loved seeing people succeed, and I took a lot of pride when, our products were getting real results for those people. And look, Australia's a funny country as well too, man, because we are the land of the tall poppy. And it's funny because sometimes I look at the Australian ethos of that tall poppy, and then I see sort of almost like the new crew that's almost like the big flashy, which Australians never were too, yes. Right? And this whole look at me sort of thing. And I guess it's like, in business, it's difficult to do business in Australia. We've got a lot of red tape here.
Yes.
We've got a lot of regulatory oversight in the supplement industry as well too, compared to the FDA. Then we've obviously got a small population. Then we've got to battle the tall poppy syndrome as well too. And then we've got this new breed of brashness, which is kind of puts me off a little bit in terms of this, I'm the best thing since sliced bread. I'm not saying that you shouldn't believe that you're good, but there's that between hubris and actually, so you kind of look at it as well too. And I just remember the amount of flack that we used to get, the amount of and we're a small company, man. Like, I mean, we grow pretty quickly, right? Yeah. But man, we used to cop so much flack just because we did things a little bit differently. Like we did a podcast. I remember when we did it have a few personal trainers and maybe a few store owners might listen to it. Yeah. And then obviously, again, it sort of worked with Steve and Matt and myself. It sort of worked, right? Like it just kind of worked. But yeah, in terms of obviously, again, trying not to get distracted by that, because that can obviously weigh on you as well too, as what other people are saying to about people attacking you. When you feel that you're doing the best thing that you possibly can, like you're adding value to people's life, that weighs on you a little bit too as well too. That's a bit of a mental game.
But that's also part of motivation, you might feel as well.
Yeah.
So with ATP and that, now it's moved you into a new line.
Yeah.
Same sort of work as far as designing quality product, but into men's skincare.
Well, it's funny, man, because like the whole thing with ATP Science was all about, and even with TSD, like TSD was started, came back from overseas, and my father said something to me when I was very young. He said, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Like lots of people heard that, right? And I'm like, well, I really love working with athletes. I really love, seeing people succeed, whether it be, losing weight or putting on muscle or whatever it may be. And so that's when we started TSD, because I liked it, right? And then we saw with the brand, we saw, well, there's a way that we can actually do it better. Right? I mean, of course, why do it if you don't feel like you can do it better? So when Tony and I left ATP Science, and that was sad. That was a really sad time for us as well too. We just didn't have, like, we wanted to go this way, and the board wanted to go a slightly different way because we'd taken on an investment, and so we weren't the sole decision makers in the company anymore. So when Tony and I stepped down, we had a period of 12 months where we couldn't do supplementation. But in the background, one of the things that I wanted to be looking at as I was getting older was things that were important to me. Yes. So we had looked at skin and hair and some other things as well too. So we've actually created a hair restoration system. In fact, we played around with it and actually had some prototypes, probably 2016, I think. But we never brought them to market because we just never had the bandwidth, right? You know what I mean? So and I'm not sure if you've seen my before and after photos, but I had a lot of cancer. Like huge injuries and treatment for my face, which left a lot of scarring, a lot of red marks and that sort of stuff. And, you know, as you get older, you know, I still want to look good. As I like to say to people, because this is a funny thing around how you feel as a person, how you project, is that it's not that I want to be a Rembrandt. I just don't want to be a Picasso.
No,
but I want to take pride in my appearance because I want to do it for. I want my wife just to look at me and go, I'm still attracted to my husband. He still looks good. And again, not in a vanity only project, because I mean, I understand as well too, like, especially with men as well too, we have a tendency sometimes not to look after ourselves as much as we should. Your message, and obviously ATP message, look after your health, like, you know, drop those extra kilos, make sure your cardiovascular is good, you know, all that.
Be functional.
But also on the flip side of that, you look healthy, you feel good, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You feel attractive in your own right. And I don't know too many people I could go out to there and go, if you could look more attractive, would you? If you could be more attractive to your partner? No? Well, then don't brush your teeth and don't brush your hair. Don't put on some nice clothes. Just wear a blooming Hessian sack as opposed to. So in terms of our identity and how we look as well too, and it's funny in Australia as well too, it's starting to move along a lot more. Guys are starting to go, you know what? I do want to take care of my skin. I do want to look better and feel better about myself. And so the whole idea around Mr Wulf is exactly the same ethos that we had at ATP Science and at TSD, which is put the customers first. What is it? And so when we created the product, we just threw everything out. Like, what can we put in there in terms of peptides, natural ingredients? What can we leave out of it in terms of, you know,
toxicity and things?
Well, toxic ingredients are huge. And I think it's really becoming poignant at the moment as we're talking about, you know, PFAs, you know, forever chemicals and the impact. And one of the big things, and this is kind of why I'm really happy to be talking to you about it as well too, even with everything else that we're talking about, one of the major issues why, specifically for stuff that you're putting on your skin or that you're consuming, that you want to reduce as much as you can, because we're bombarded with it all the time. And I think sometimes people throw the baby out with the bathwater. They go, it's too much, it's overwhelming. I can't be perfect. It's not about being perfect. But when you're putting stuff onto your skin, which is obviously, you know, the largest organs, stuff gets in through our skin, right?
Absolutely.
The reduction in testosterone levels, I know for a fact that some of these toxins can reduce testosterone levels by as much as 30% in just a matter of weeks.
Absolutely.
Right? But then when you're constantly putting these parabens and these phthalates and these other things, perfumes, onto your skin.
There was a study last year that actually measured, last year or the year before, and the results found that men in their 20s had the same level of testosterone as 60-year-old men 20 years prior.
Yeah, well, it's really cool because I actually went and did a big study into this and had a look, and I wrote an article. I don't know if I published it or not, but it said you're not half the man that your grandfather used to be.
Yeah.
Testosterone levels in 50 years have dropped about 50%, roughly. I mean, it's pretty close. And obviously, it's not just one thing, but there's lots of things. Actually, even before I came and saw you today, I was just looking on LinkedIn, and I think a lot of us have seen this. You know, people back in the 50s and 60s going to the beach, right? And everyone's fit and healthy. You know, obviously, there's probably not as big a guys as what you would be there because obviously we understand a lot more about training and nutrition, what have you. But the increase in obesity is going through the roof. You know, obviously there's lots and lots of reasons for that. Part of that reason, I think, is the introduction of these chemicals, which are endocrine disruptors, which are xenoestrogens, which are, you know, increasing the amount of body fat that we're having, which means that our detoxification pathways are having to deal with all this crap as opposed to our normal stuff. And then we're surrounded by radiation and all the rest of it. And this is where I think, this is what gets me frustrated, because a lot of people then go, well, I'm not going to move out into the middle of the desert. I'm not going to move into the mountain where there's no, you know, 5G. I'm not going to, you know, even the carpet that you walk on, you know what I mean? Like I've got people now that are actually pulling up their nylon carpet, putting down wool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like wearing cotton shirts and linen, which is what I'm changing to, as opposed to using more synthetics and stuff like that. Even the frequency, oh man, I mean, we could really go down the rabbit hole here. But people go, there is so much. There is so much. I'm just going to put my head in the sand and I don't even want to think about it.
And this is where the slight edge principle comes in. It's like, it's not about making one massive change for the best results. It's little things like being aware of what clothes you wear, what you put on your skin. Just the slight edge. Even if you don't go to the gym and exercise, if you're walking out on the street and you're more conscious about what you put on your body, that in itself is compounding interesting towards your health.
100%.
You know, so with the Mr Wulf products, tell us a little bit about what's in it.
So what we want to do is we want to create something, and it's funny because it's targeted towards men, because I think men need help in this area, and also as we age as well too, there's lots of things that start to happen to our skin.
Yep.
You know, firstly, the skin cell turnover slows down dramatically. In fact, by the time you're 40, it's about 30% slower. So in other words, and this is how quickly your skin turns over. When you're in your 20s, it's about every 20 days. When you're in 30s, it's about every 30 days. So it goes like that, right? And that obviously looks to the dullness of your skin, how fresh your skin is, removing blemishes, you know, pigmentation, all that sort of stuff, right? What we've found from our study is that around about 2/3 of men use a cleanser on average, but they might use it 2 or 3 times a week, which is better than nothing, right? A lot of men use nothing. A lot of men just use soap, which is drying out the skin and potentially causing, you know, blockages and all the rest of it. But for the men that are using it, it is keeping their skin better, keeping wrinkles at bay. It's keeping their skin hydrated and also less rough. Now, all of us are different. You've got more melanin in your skin. Naturally, you might have more hydration, more moisture in your skin than Scottish skin. Terrible, right? So I have to be more careful. But then we wanted to create a system because about 60% of men will use a cleanser. Nearly the same amount of men will use a moisture from time to time.
Yes.
A lot of the time, they're picking up their wife's stuff.
Yes, they are.
A lot of time, they're just
might grab something on the shelf.
Sure. and it's like anything, right? Like, again, most of that cheap stuff has chemicals in it that I wouldn't put on anybody that I care about. So then there's the reverse, is actually then what's in it, like how does it work? You know, like I think we understand a lot about peptides and bodybuilding now. Same thing for skin as well too. There's some incredible advancements in peptides and how they work for the skin, including, you know, collagen production, reducing wrinkle depth, improving wound healing, improving the tone and texture of the skin, reducing hyperpigmentation. There's so many things now. And while you wouldn't call them natural, just as you wouldn't call a peptide natural, they're beneficial with no negatives, if that makes sense, because there's obviously studies behind it. So that's your moisturizer. And then obviously, lastly, there's the serum. Now, only about 1 in 10 guys will use a serum because they don't understand it. They don't know if it's necessary. They don't know, because they don't understand the benefits and how it can actually improve skin. They're like, well, that seems quite expensive. I'm not going to use it. So we created a 3-tiered system of, firstly, a cleanser to slough off the dead skin cells. My wife hates that word. To get rid of the dead skin cells and to help increase turnover, we use Australian finger lime, and we put it through a postbiotic fermentation process, which releases more of the actives in there. So it becomes activated, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And it's got some other ingredients in there as well too, all designed to cleanse the skin, but it also locks in the moisture as well too, because a lot of cleansers, if you've ever used some of the cheaper ones, especially if they're full of sodium mineral sulfates and that, they'll cleanse the skin, but then they'll strip out all the natural oils and and that actually dries the skin, right?
People get sunburns and stuff when they do that. The skin gets drier.
What it does, I don't know if it's actually on purpose or not, but what it does, it makes it cleanses the skin, so you get that really nice feeling of cleanse. But because it strips out the natural oil, it then makes the skin dry. So therefore, you must then use a moisturizer on top, but you're actually creating a problem then to then create, create a solution, or give them a solution as well too. So one of the things of a really good cleanser, and this is for girls that are listening as well too, is that when you use it, your skin should feel cleansed, but it shouldn't feel dry. And the way that you tell that is, don't put anything on, for the rest of the day. If your skin still feels like it's got moisture and it doesn't feel like it's dry, or you're starting to sort of crack, then you've got yourself a really good cleanser. So ours is done with a combination of Australian finger lime. We've got lactic acid in there as well too. We've put hibiscus in there as well too. We've got a whole heap of ingredients which are natural, fermented natural, and it actually hydrates the skin as well as cleanses it as well too.
That's just with the cleanser itself.
That's just with the cleanser. So as I said, it improves cell turnover, even for somebody in their middle age, by about 25%.
Wow.
So one of the reasons why skin ages is because of cell turnover.
Which gets slower over time.
Which most people don't think about. So they think about anti-aging skincare, they think a serum is anti-aging. No. Starting right from your cleanser. If it's a good one, that's actually an anti-aging step.
Absolutely.
So then you've got the moisturizer as well too. Now, we based ours on macadamia nut. which is really cool because it's got omega-7 in there, which actually naturally mimics.
So when you say you're based on omega nut, it's not made from macadamia nut.
Macadamia nut.
All right. Yeah. And do you have any issues with people having a version that I've not?
Haven't had a single one yet. I mean, obviously, if people are highly reactive to nuts, typically it's peanuts. But they can be, and that is aware. So if you've got a concern, you should always do a little patch test. But so far, hundreds, of feedback, and we've had absolutely nobody have a problem so far with the macadamia nut. You know who was a huge fan of macadamias? Arnold. Really? He reckoned in the diet they're one of the best things that you get.
There you go.
So if Arnold approves, right? But yeah, then we've infused it with some peptides as well to actually help with collagen production. But the biggest thing about the moisturizer, and again, talking about the benefit, is that it's an adaptive moisturizer. And this is a really hard one. So people who have got oily skin, it'll make your skin less oily. If you've got really dry skin, so I've got really, really dry skin, like really, really dry skin. And it makes my skin really supple, really soft. Like it feels like literally from the first day that I started using it. But it does have a prolonged effect. For people that have got really oily skin, it makes it sort of less oily. For people that have got really dry skin, it sort of brings it back.
Balances it up.
And for people that have got combination skin, like my wife, she's got what they call an oily T section. And guys, I don't know if you're probably listening to this going to, I really want to know this. If I can say that you might look 5 years younger, you probably live right. But and so it works for her. So it actually is adaptive. So in other words, those areas that are too oily, it sort of helps to reduce the amount.
And creates an even balance throughout the skin.
Which is huge. And again, this is where we say the products, the proof's in the pudding, which is why we give 100% money back guarantee on our products as well too. So you can use them. And if you don't like them, if you don't think they're worth the money, then send it back to us and we'll refund you, right?
Wow.
So, okay. And that's because we want people to use it. And especially guys as well too, if you're at the gym, you're looking after yourself, but you haven't thought about your face. Like I hadn't until literally I put my glasses on one day and went, wow. And Tony's like, yeah, Jeff, you really start to need looking after your skin, right? Yeah. Last thing is obviously the serum, which is where we've jammed every single peptide that we possibly can in there to help with collagen production, to help with reducing wrinkles. What's really cool is that a lot of people hear about Botox, right? They've proven now that Botox crosses the blood-brain barrier. Absolutely. And my wife is looking at it as well too, which means some serious negative effects down the track. Something interesting as well too, if you have a look at
never mind the cosmetic effects it leaves with you structurally over time.
Oh, 100%.
That's even like they've got scans where they show the 3D scans where it just stays accumulated and it disperses and it breaks up, doesn't hold its shape.
Dude, and then fillers and all that sort of stuff that they're using as well too. It's horrendous, right? So what we've looked at in terms of, like, I think a lot of guys understand creatine, right? Take creatine, increases adenosine triphosphate, which obviously is those 3 phosphates splits, gives you more power, gives you more energy. When you're training, that's why you need to rest about 2 to 3 minutes, depending on obviously how much you want to get back to recuperate. It's all about chemical process in the body. SNAP8, which is one of the peptides that we use in here, actually inhibits the receptors from firing with the acetylcholine. So what it does is it naturally reduces the muscles contracting in that area by about 30% through a natural means. So there's no negative side effects. There's no piper to pay, if that makes sense. The studies have shown that a reduction of around about 30% in 28 days when using this in the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles.
But it's funny because even the one thing they talk about in psychology and stuff is how so many times we scrunch our face when we're thinking or stressed, and how that in itself, through meditation, you need to relax your facial muscles. So you're saying that this will actually help you do that? To
relax your face, yeah. That's exactly right. And it's the best thing, as I said, we really, because a lot of brands are out there, and one of the things that Tony and I looked at as we sat down with the formulators as well too, because I love nature, and I believe that a lot of answers are in nature. And we said, we want to create a completely natural brand. And they went, okay, so you want nature first, and then you want effect. And I'm like, well, no, I want effect and I want nature. And they're like, well, you have to choose. It's all natural, and then it's effective, but it will be less effective. Or you can go for peptides, which you'll have the highest effect, but it won't be 100% natural. I'm like, so this is where I went, and I'm like, I don't want that. I want both. And they said, well, go away and have a look at it and tell me what it is in there that you don't like. And so what it was that I had a look that I didn't like was actually the toxins, the things that were known to do harm. Yeah. When I actually looked into the peptides, just as a guy who's doing bodybuilding, if you're using peptides, you're going to get excellent results. From what my understanding is that with, BPC 157, all the rest of it. Lots of benefits, no negatives.
Yes.
So it's the same on this as well too. It's like, okay, so what we've said is we want our product to be the most effective products that we could make with no harm, no toxins, nothing that's going to be bad for you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we got to that point of Mr. Wulf is about the best products that we could create while doing absolutely no harm.
Pretty much the most natural products with the highest level of effect.
Yeah.
Because most people will look for the quicker way. They grab the pill that will give you the best results regardless of the toxicity of things.
Yeah.
So it's like you're reaching one good point, but then you counterbalance it with a very steep negative.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're better off finding that balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously, you know, I've started using your product.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the funny thing was as well too is that as we were going through this, and we only launched the company back in September, and Tony was going through and going, oh, you know, who can we work with to represent our brand? And she went and did all of that, and she goes, Jeff, Pedro, I'm like, of course I do. I said, yeah. He goes, do you know that his tag name is Wolf? I'm like, Wolf Pepe. I'm like, that's perfect. Let me give him a call. Man, and all that, you know, because obviously down the track, we've got some other products that we're bringing out as well too, which again, you've been trialing.
Well, this is what I wanted to share with you is personal feedback.
Yeah.
So when I started using your product prior to you actually saying, Pedro, I've got something for you to try. Prior to that, my partner had been trying to get me to use moisturizer because she's really good into skincare. And I would buy the generic stuff off the shelves. Again, being a man, I would let my wallet choose which was the best product for me. And you'd think that most times they're on the shelf, they must be safe and you use them. But I never really found the habit of doing it more. And I didn't feel like, in fact, I felt better when I didn't use them, to be honest.
Yeah.
And when I got your product I was really excited to see, because obviously I know your history with ATP and things like that. So when I first used it, the biggest thing I found was the sensation I felt in my skin. With the cleanser, it felt really, really clean. And again, because I've heard the word cleanser, you go back, is it dry? Isn't it dry? And again, never felt it. I've done the mistake of showering using the cleanser and then forgetting to do the next two steps. Yeah. And I was always kind of thinking, you know, my skin's going to be, but throughout the day, it never was. There wasn't a difference. I wouldn't have known if I had or hadn't. Yeah. And as I've started using your product more regularly, it was a psychosomatic, but even just after using the moisturizer, my skin feels fuller and softer and more vibrant. Yeah. But how I was feeling was a big impact. And I often get this because I'm 48, 2 years away shy. And even my daughter came home with the best compliment saying that her friends thought I was 38. And I get asked a lot of questions. What do you do for your age? What motivates you to fight this anti-aging thing? And for me, I'm very lucky in the sense that when I had my tumors and recovering from them, I wasn't worried about my age. I wasn't worried about what life would take me. I was just worried about being better. Yeah. I mean, the end was near. The prognosis was that there was a limited amount of time. So I just wanted to be the best version of myself in my current state. And as life continued to progress, I've never wanted to be best, because I don't believe we'll ever be our best. I believe that we will always have to be better and better, because when you're at your best now, there's a part of you that knows you can still be better. So that was my only goal. And starting to do this progress, I've always wanted to be functional. So not only did I want to look good, and bodybuilding kind of helped with that, I've got the atrophy in my sternocleidomastoid muscle, my left shoulder rolls, all conditions based on the surgery. But I still wanted to present myself as physically possible as I could, because I wanted that image. And like you said, got my hair cut, started. The only thing I never did was my skin. I was also very lucky because nutrition played a huge part. Being peg fed, I stayed away from simple sugars, don't drink much alcohol. Yeah. So most of the stuff I put in, I believe, had a positive effect on my skin. Compared to if I was just had a normal oral diet, you tend to cheat a little bit more with that. The biggest thing I have to say that I found was, like you said, we all want to look good for our partners. But I actually started feeling more and more confident about myself. When we go back to the slight edge thing, I know it's just twice a day and it takes 2 minutes. The actual process is 2 minutes, but the time frame is 10 minutes. But in those 10 minutes, I'm doing what I normally do, which is shower and brush my teeth anyways.
That's it.
And the simple fact that I've continued this natural habit of doing my skin, every time I do, I feel like it's a checkbox. Yep. And it goes back to what I was saying with at the slight edge. It's if I do this every day, what's it going to be like 10 years down the line versus
100%.
if I don't do it every day?
100%.
And as much as I want to look good for my partner, I've also realized I have a sense of self-confidence knowing, wow, I look in the mirror and I'm proud that I'm investing in myself. So you had said something very interesting to me, which I completely agree on, is that many people talk about, oh, it's vanity when you do your skin. And you brought up a really good, because you said, no, it's self-respect. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, the big thing I think is that in terms of your self-image is basically how you see yourself is typically how other people will perceive you as well too. And what I mean by that is that in terms of if you ever meet these people that are shrink back, they feel like they're not worthy, they feel like they're not important, they project that. They've got an energy when you come into the room as well too. And I'm always interested in terms of how you meet people. If you've got a low energy, if you've got a bad opinion of yourself, if you feel like you're less than what you actually are, then you're actually never able to connect in a way with somebody that's actually that meaningful, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So I think in terms of the way that we think about ourselves and the way that we actually present ourselves and the way that we take care of ourselves shows obviously that we feel that we are worthy of that. And it's a kind of I know that you and I have spoken about this a couple of times, and it's actually quite a deep way of thinking, because I think a lot of men, especially Australian men, and don't think this way. I think they think if they need to actually stop and actually really assess, what do I think about myself? How do I actually present myself? How do I present the best version of myself? And obviously with the gym and all the rest of it, whether people are consciously understanding that or subconsciously doing it, they're trying to present the best version of themselves. Yes. Same thing with the skin as well too. Same thing with, cutting your hair. Same thing with the clothes that you wear. Same thing with any of that sort of stuff. And it doesn't mean that it should be the vision should be the be all and end all. It's only about that. But I think it is part of who we are. It is part of how we present and how we connect with other people.
I saw a guy talking on, I think it was TikTok. An important moment in him is when he was with his psychologist, and she says, "Why are you here? You seem to be very well rounded and structured." And his reply was like, "Look, I'm a good dad, I'm a good husband, and I'm a really good trainer, but I just want to be better." And her reply to him was, "A good husband is who you are to your wife. Mm-hmm. A good trainer is who you are to your clients. Mm-hmm. And a good dad is who you are to your children. Mm-hmm. Who are you to you?"
Yeah.
And as men, we tend to we do have a sense of purpose. It's built in us where we want to build and provide and take care of. And I always say a man can do phenomenal things on his own. He can be incredible. But the man with the right woman will smash the world.
Yeah.
Because he creates that sense of purpose for us.
Yeah.
The man with the right family, that's how we build. So we tend to obviously externalize and give. But we're all finding it hard, even as time's progressed. Men don't have the same connections they used to. Guys' nights out tends to be more of a negotiation and a privilege, where in the past it just used to happen. Losing that connection, we find ourselves living for everybody else. So where do you find the time to invest in yourself? Most guys go to the gym because they feel, I want to, but again, they're going because they want to be fit for their kids, because they want to create a better body. They don't really register, I'm here to spend quality time with me. And every time I do the face cleansing moment, I genuinely feel like I'm not trying to look younger. I'm not trying to impress my partner. I'm not trying to improve my looks. I'm literally just going, you deserve to be pampered. You deserve to have that little bit extra care and recovery. Because I also look at my skincare treatment as recovery, because of the training you do, the sweating you do. I'm always out in the sun.
Environmental factors,
so if I'm able to structure my recovery time for my body, I need to be aware of what I'm putting my skin under as well. And then when you bring health and melanomas and all this into it, it creates even more of a sense of purpose for me to actually invest in myself. And every time I do, it's 4 minutes every day that it's my time for me, that I'm doing it for me.
100%.
And I it's become a positive habit. And when people say, but you could be doing better things with your time. And I'm like what? Scrolling TikTok? And I really think it's about self-investment that makes me feel like I'm giving to myself. And I can genuinely say for me personally, because I'm doing that in that mindset, every time I do it, I feel like I've just had a cold shower and I've been woken up and I'm ready to hit whatever's next. You know, it's a real pick me up. And I think when I talk to other men about skincare products, I find most of them aren't interested initially, and their partners always.
Yeah.
Women tend to obviously put a lot more attention to their skincare. I would argue that's also sometimes marketability.
Yeah.
Because it's thrown in your face all the time. And women have more of I would argue, have a fear of aging more so than men.
I'd agree with that.
Okay. Yep. So I can understand that impactful point. Men don't have that fear. So when I was trying to explain to them the benefits of why I'm using skincare products, their perception was coming from, he's afraid of getting old. He's afraid of, and I'm like, nah, it's the same reason why I'm in the gym. I am getting old. Yeah. I just don't want to stop getting better. Yeah. There's the difference. And I'm not trying to fight my age here. I'm just trying to be a better character and invest and give my body the best it deserves because of everything I've been through and everything I want to go through.
And you are the sum of your actions as well too. I mean, you see people who obviously, have really bad diet, eat too much sugar, drink all the time, don't go to gym, don't look after themselves. The quality of the expression of who they are, by the time they're both at 60, the person who's going to gym, looking after themselves, eating well, all the rest of it. And I think this is a big thing as well too. You kind of mentioned it. It's difficult. It's a difficult process because a lot of people go, the guy's just into himself, or he's just vain, or what have you. But at the end of the day, if you want to, as you say, and again, this is overused cliche, but live your best life. If you want to live life according to your terms and be doing everything that you can to be the best version of yourself, which I know that these things are overused in terms of cliches, but it's true. It really is. And at the end of the day, you are, that 1% every day, as Alice KD says as well too. It's that consistent putting in the effort, turning up every day. In 10, 20 years from now, you can say, I've done all that I can. I even say that to my kids as well too when they're playing sport. I said, have you done all that you can, when you're going to do it? Because I said, win or lose, it doesn't matter. It's how you feel about when you come off. You can shake their hand and say, well done, you guys won because you did a better job. But if you weren't prepared, if you didn't try, why are you doing this? Are you doing this to be the best version of yourself? If it's just about winning and losing, it's the same sort of mentality as well too. You're just doing this because you're actually worth it. And it's funny because when talking to you, that you sort of sharpen that sort of deeper inner man, if that makes sense. When I was talking to you and you talk about it and you can articulate it in a way that I haven't had too many people talk about it. Because when it comes down to it, it's a reflection, obviously, of who you think you are. And as you say, do I deserve this? All the rest of it. It's like, well, I'm just presenting myself the way that I want to be presented.
I personally, obviously, I do a lot with men's mental health, and and I find that the biggest thing that we have is the judgment we get from society as a whole. And nowadays, it's toxic masculinity, this and everything else, right? And I do believe that a man is accountable for his actions, but he's also responsible for taking care of those that he loves.
Of course.
And when I talk about the responsibility, I'm not saying that it's a social responsibility, but it's one that you assume as a man, in my opinion, because that's how we are intrinsically built. It's something that you can't fight. If a man says, I'm not going to be responsible for just me, I think that man is always going to feel a small void in his life if he doesn't have that sense of purpose. Absolutely. But that sense of purpose means you have to include yourself in that as well. Mm-hmm. And my son, he in his early teens, he had really bad acne, and he had to jump on the Accutane, which I was not a big fan of at all. And I encouraged him to look at his diet and a whole bunch of other things, but to him it actually got worse. And at the same time, because he's been in the gym with me at a young age, his diet wasn't reflecting the acidity buildup in his body. And if he's like me, I have a high acidic system. So I've got to make sure that I alkalize myself. When he jumped on Accutane, he obviously got good results, but I had to keep reminding, this is actually worse for your skin than the pimples you're dealing with. Because the pimples are cosmetic and they're uncomfortable, but it's the body detoxing. This is flushing all that out, plus all the good shit. Yeah. So you had to counteract that. But now in his early 20s, and I'm just like, dude, you have to jump on Mr. Wulf. Because that's the next step of maintaining your skin healthy. And he's like, my pimples are good now. It's like, it's not about your pimples.
Yeah.
It's about you've just literally took something that was damaging to your skin,
yeah,
and you were happy to do that because of your pimples.
Well, 100%.
But now you're too lazy to do it because it's for your health.
Yeah.
So we always want to do something when the problem hits.
That's it.
But we're not doing anything to prevent the issue, right?
Tony was looking at this in terms of just understanding sales. And I forget the exact statistics, so please don't quote me on this, but it's something like people will spend 1,000 times more to solve an immediate problem than what they will to prevent a problem in the future.
Absolutely.
We are just not wired. Most people are not wired that way.
We will take a bigger risk to hold on what we have and take a bigger risk to gain something new.
Yeah, it's just incredible. It's just
human
incredible.
nature.
And look, it's our biggest organ. I mean, and we're constantly being assaulted by all sorts of environmental pollutions all the time. I wish I could go back and speak to my younger self, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And go, hey, if you should be doing this, right? But again, better late than never. And that's one of the other things that I find people stop as well too. Well, I should have, and I didn't, so I won't. It's like, start today. Start today.
It's the slight edge. Yeah. It's not about looking at the end result and being overwhelmed. It's just like 2 minutes every day. But again, I think the attitude that we do it with is slightly different to what women do. Yeah. As a guy, for me, it's just about doing the small little step, the slight edge for me to be ahead of. And as much as men work together, we're also competitive.
Yeah.
But that's why we're successful.
Well, that's why you saw it with Mick before. Obviously, it's that.
Absolutely. That drive.
Competing is great.
But the I don't even know the right word that I could use for that. Losing to someone like Gally felt like such a win.
Yeah, 100%.
It's so hard to describe. It wasn't because my brain wasn't on that competition and that stage.
Yeah.
I lost that stage time. But I won so much more. I won Gally's respect. I won Lowe's respect. I won self-respect because I was like, I had these guys on my wall, and now I'm actually one of them. To me, that was far greater than walking home with the trophy.
Yeah.
And I think that's the attitude when you're coming in to do any sort of self-investment, whether it's skincare, nutrition, training. It's about knowing it's not about being the best, being better.
Yeah.
And that every little one is a small micro win. Yeah. When you do that over 10 years, where are you going to be?
100%.
Versus saying, it's not such a big deal.
Yeah. Or I can't win. I'm not going to be as good as that guy. So the version of yourself is here as opposed to actually being here. You know what I mean? And then ultimately, as you say, comparison is the thief of joy. True. But if you look at it and say, where am I at based on where I want to be? If it's down here, then you're responsible for that.
Absolutely.
Because if you've said, well, I have to beat him to be happy. But as you say, if he's elevated, you go. It's the same way I say this to my kids all the time. I said, win, lose, or draw, I don't care. So long as you've enjoyed yourself, because enjoyment and true self-worth comes from knowing that you've done your best, regardless of the outcome.
It's acceptance. So I had a podcast that I just did very released before we end off. I saw another guy in his podcast. He was talking to a woman who's a fighter, and she made the comment, you can join a fight gym and you don't have to fight. And you can go and train like a fighter, but you don't have to fight. You can support other fighters. And I actually had a little bit of a reaction to that statement. And it was my reaction. Yeah. I understood what she was saying. For her, it was the context of we welcome everybody.
Sure.
And I do believe there are a lot of health benefits. But I think she lost the main point is like, it's like saying you can be in a relationship, but you don't have to be committed.
Yeah.
You can have a job, but you don't have to work. And that's the mentality that we have nowadays. I'm one of those people that I say, you can't be something if you don't put the work in. Yeah. You can't bullshit yourself into saying, well, I wash my face every day, so I'm doing skincare.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're not. And you don't have to, but don't bullshit yourself about it.
That's right.
And you say, well, I want to be the best version of me, but then you're not controlling yourself when you're angry. You're not looking at ways to how you can improve your communication with your partner. You're not addressing those issues. And the main thing is coming back to the small little steps. So I can say, I am looking after myself. What do you do? I try and exercise. I eat right. I look after my skin. I meditate. Why do you do that? For everybody else? For me first. Because everybody else deserves the best version of me.
Yeah, 100%.
The people I love deserve the best of me.
you're saying something before in terms of obviously we're very externally focused as men. We're providing for the family. We're obviously, protecting, looking after our home. And you're right. The fact that they call these things toxic is obviously trying to break down the family, which I believe that. Let's not get into that, but I am 100% right. But in terms of, you're right, it's funny, I was talking with a psychologist recently around about the well, right? Like what you draw from. How deep is that well? How much time do you invest into yourself? And I think this whole culture and this whole thing about with men as well too, is that we need time to work on ourselves, whatever that, and on all areas, spiritually, mentally, physically, we need to be working on ourselves, because from that we can obviously draw. And as you say, like, it's such a deep topic, man. I mean, like, it's really deep. Well, I mean, obviously your viewers are pretty smart because they're listening to you. But this is something you don't hear a lot about. This, I mean, often the times these sorts of things just, as you say, go to a surface level, and they don't actually go any further than that, because who you are at the center of your being is obviously what you draw from. That's how you connect with people. That's how you present. Obviously, the most important opinion that matters is your opinion of yourself, which is where if you feel like you're a whipped dog, if you don't feel, and a lot of that comes down from the way that you treat yourself.
Absolutely. Or you allow others to treat you. I run a men's group, and we call it the Pack. And we catch up once a month.
There you go.
And it's been very low key at the moment because I've got a feeling it's going to go pretty big. Yeah. But what it is, it's one Saturday every month. It's the last Saturday of every 4 weeks. And it's from 8 to 12. And I've run about 3 or 4 now. And I've actually then had a conversation with the spouses of the men that come to the group. So the first 2 hours is self-investment. Mm-hmm. So we'll attend a seminar, we'll do a BJJ workshop, we'll do an investment workshop, study nutrition, a CrossFit section. It's self-investment. Something new that we haven't experienced, and to build our wealth of knowledge and experience. The second part is community service. So we help anyone that needs, like whether you're sick at home and you need the yards done, we will come and do it. If you need to move stuff, we will do that. If we've got disabled kids that want to go to bounce, we will go and chaperone them. So what I found, myself particular, amazing. I would spend those 4 hours, and the rest of the day, I'm a whole new person. And the person that got me onto that was my son. He started to volunteer at AWL, and he was going every Saturday. And he's working with Animal Welfare League. Right. So he looks after the dog section, because him and I were just dog people. Yeah. And he was doing it as part of his uni, his placement. Doesn't have to do it anymore, but he goes. And he pretty much studies and works full time. 5 days a week, he's chock-a-block. Saturdays, his day off. But every Saturday at 8 a.m., he's there until midday. By the time he comes home, he's a whole different person. Just because of the time he spent with the dogs. This quality, the sense of purpose, the joy he brings the dogs, but the sense of purpose they bring to him. I evolved this onto men. Then I spoke to a couple of the wives. The common denominator was like, I can't believe how amazing my husband was that day. Wow. He came home. He was in high spirits. He had a puncture in his tire that morning. He went and got it fixed. He says, I had gone to the shops. I forgot. I asked him to go. He was like, yeah, I'll be back in 2 minutes. And off he went to the shops. He didn't complain. He didn't say, I was there this morning. His whole, and she says, he hasn't been that present in so long. Yeah, right. And that was purely because of those 4 hours of self-investment and purpose. He gave to himself, and he was able to give to others. And by the time he went home, he felt the best version of himself that he was able to provide in a joyful manner towards his family. Now, I know there's a little bit of an extreme, but I personally feel like that every time I do my routines, whether it's meditating, whether it's my skincare. I just feel better about myself, and I have this drive to want to do more for those that I care about. And it just stems from that. So when you approach to me about, I've got this amazing product for your skin and for your anti-aging, all that just really, really, I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly, this is what I wanted. But I didn't realize the cognitive mental aspect that it would have on my perception of self.
Well, it's funny, mate, because and I haven't really spoken too much about that, but the whole idea that we called the company Mr Wulf was around, obviously, men over the age of 35. With the whole counterculture at the moment of men are toxic, men are bad, everything's bad. And look, obviously, there's bad actors everywhere, right? It's easy to point out a few bad ones and say, well, represents everybody. And my wife and also another close friend of mine who I won't mention, really have taken, and they're women, have taken this to heart as well too, because they're like, man, we need good, strong men who feel valuable in society, who, know that they're loved and know that they're appreciated and know that their role matters, right? And so when we created Mr. Wulf, and it's funny because obviously people have said, like, can my wife use the products? Yes, she can. And my wife does use the products, and they're no pink tax, I say. Yeah, if you bought the same one of women, it probably cost you a lot more, right? Maybe they're not pink in color, and maybe they don't have floral scents or something. I'm not saying that all products smell like floral scents, but yes, they can. But the whole idea of it was similar to the concept in terms of, what do I want to see? Okay, so we couldn't do supplementation, so we didn't. We're looking at that now, obviously, as we grow. But I want to provide information, education, and products that men can utilize to, feel better about themselves, tackle any of the problems that they've got. So we're looking at a whole host of, other things that ail men over the age of 35 that we're going to be addressing with Mr. Wulf.
Fantastic.
And that comes, we're not releasing a lot of that yet. Some of those things that we're doing, but we want to be that area. And this is why what we stand for, what the brand stands for, is about men.
Yep.
It's about men over the age of 35. It's about providing solutions, providing a community, providing products, providing an identity that they can resonate
with. It's a holistic approach.
Yeah.
So before we end off, mate, some advice for our listeners, men. If they had to pick one product, if they were only going to get one and not all three, which one would you suggest they attack first?
Probably the cleanser.
The cleanser.
And it's really funny because if you're putting on a moisturizer and you haven't cleansed your face properly, straight away by putting in the cleanser, and I can actually, I'll go through really quickly. I printed out some of the stats because I don't always commit them to memory. When you use the cleanser, you're cleaning off those dead skin cells. You're helping the turnover of your skin by about 25%, which is amazing. Getting rid of all those environmental pollutants, and you're supporting the skin with natural hydration as well too, right? So that's number one. But when you do that, it actually prepares the skin, because you're unclogging the pores and actually opening up the skin, if you like. You're actually preparing it for the serum, and then lastly the moisturizer. And that's the way that you should use it, right? You should use a cleanser, then you should use the serum, and then you use the moisturizer last. So that is almost like the opening, the infusion, and the closing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
But that's what I'd suggest. Now, what's really funny is that it's 100 ml. You only need a couple of pumps. What I find is that most guys probably can get 2 months out of one of those, maybe even more. For guys that are really sort of, either they've got something that they're addressing, or if they really want to, as you say, some guys go to gym twice a week. Some guys go to
6 days a week.
That's right. Yep. So depending on what type of guy you are, the more that you put in, the more that you're going to get back. But even using it 2 or 3 times a week is going to have a massive improvement. For what we find a lot of guys is they just use it once. So they'll use it, either first thing in the morning or last thing before bed. Yeah. That's awesome. And it's not about being perfect. This is the thing as well. You're talking to people about going to gym. It's like, oh man, do I have to go 6 days a week and train at that intensity for an hour, for 45 minutes? I might go, look, I can train 3 times a week for half an hour. Can you work with that? It's great, right?
Like you said, each one is a deposit.
Yeah, 100%, right? So that would be the first one. We have done a little bundle where we understand that a lot of guys use a cleanser and a moisturizer, and that's probably
the best combo.
But I say as well too, treat yourself. Christmas is coming up. You can use small amounts of the serum, even if you use it infrequently, because the serum is where all the magic is. And I'll go through it in a minute just to sort of explain some of those things. But taking some action is better than taking no action.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate as well too that our products are not at the low end. They're not your Niveas. They're not your, because again, there's all purity in them. They're fermented postbiotic ingredients, peptides in them as well too. But what I was going to say is that in terms of the cost, typically most guys will buy a pack, Wulf pack, and that will get them, even if they're a moderate user, probably somewhere between 6 to 10 weeks.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I used the Wulf pack, and it lasted me 6 weeks with the cleanser. I've still got the other 2.
There you go.
So they definitely I do it twice a day.
There you go. So, depending on how big you are, your faces and all that sort of stuff as well. But I would say probably a Wulf pack for the average guy will last them 2 months. Yeah. So it's not a massive, and you can get discounts by obviously going cheaper. But let me just pull out some of these things. For people that are interested in actually the statistics, just really quickly, Cell turnover decreases by 28% by the age of 30, 35% by the age of 40, 42% by the age of 50, and 50% by the age of 60. That leads to dullness, uneven texture, age spots, all that sort of stuff. So the better the cell turnover, the fresher, the younger the skin is, if that makes sense, right?
And just by that logic, the sooner you get onto it, the better.
100%, even in your 20s.
Even in your 20s, absolutely.
Yeah. So the ingredients, and I've looked at the hero products in each of these products. For people that are interested, right, if you're still hanging around there and you really want to know why, Mr. Wulf. So lactic acid, AHAs, and that comes from our Australian fermented finger lime.
So when you say lactic acid, I'm curious, how does that help the skin?
So it's an acid process like an acid peel. So it actually basically helps with the oil and to cut through, right? So it's a gentle exfoliator and it increases cell turnover. The AHAs and the lactic acid alone improve improves texture by 35% and boosts cell renewal by 24%.
Wow.
The finger lime that's in there is a natural alpha hydroxy acid exfoliant. It also has a brightening effect on the skin, which basically evens skin tones. If you look at guys, especially as they get older, they've got like, if you want to have a look again, for people that are interested, if you stay this long, maybe you are, jump onto Mr. Wulf, man. I've got a before and after of my phone, of my face, which was 8 weeks apart that I took on my phone.
Crazy.
It's like the difference in terms of the discoloration on my face and the red marks and all the rest of it. I
genuinely thought when I saw that picture that you had actually specific treatment. I didn't realize it was
that was just it. And not only that, I told Tony no Photoshops, no nothing. I've even left a bit of stuff on the side of my face, which is a bit embarrassing, but it's genuine. You got your lactobacillus, which improves the resilience of the skin. That's your skin barrier by 60% in 4 weeks. So if your skin becomes less permeable, you're less likely to get affected by pollutants, which are free radicals, which obviously cause oxidative stress, which makes the skin age faster. So this is, again, if I was going to say, if you had to only pick one, so, it's like picking your favorite kid, but just this is it. It's also got isomerate in there as well too, however you pronounce that, which retains moisture in the skin for 72 hours, which is quite unusual. As I said, most cleansers don't do that. And we've also got a bit of menthol and peppermint in there, which reduces the redness, which I have a big problem with. So that, again, helps with the skin tone. The hydrating serum, which is the next one that I recommend. Skin loses 1% of its hydration after the age of 20. So by the time you're 22, you've lost down 2%. By the time you're 30, you're down 10% on your natural level of hydration. Obviously, water, electrolytes, all these things internally is really important as well too. But this just naturally happens. And also collagen. And again, for guys who understand, obviously everyone's saying drink collagen, drink collagen. Collagen production drops by 1.5% for every age over 30. So that's where you're looking at guys in their 50s and 60s and you're seeing massive big lines. Obviously, other things can create lines in the face. Do you know that smoking is one of the worst things that you can do for collagen production? And also vitamin C, because it also destroys vitamin C. Vitamin C is very important for collagen production as well too. So what we've put into this as well too is into the moisturizer, we put a 5-tier hyaluronic acid. So it actually goes through it's a different molecular weight, so it goes through the different layers of the skin. And that can increase hydration in the skin by as much as 100% within 48 hours. Wow. So in terms of plumpness and the feeling of fullness in the skin, reduces wrinkles by 30% in 28 days. That's from the Snap 8 that I told you about in terms of that. Improves elasticity in the skin by 35% in 12 weeks. Enhances collagen production by 76% in 12 weeks, reduces redness by 40% in 4 weeks, reduces redness again. So there's two that we've got in there, the nicotinamide, and also there's a tripeptide 7 that we've got in there. Both of those work on the redness scale. So one by 40%, one by 20%.
These are significant numbers.
Brighten skin tone. Look, I mean, again, I don't want to bore people again too, and I can make this available to them if they want. And just really lastly on the moisturizer as well too. That's mainly based on squalene, which is for moisture, the macadamia, which has got the omega-7, the Tasmanian pepperberry, which reduces redness again by 30%, the cacao oil, which reduces wrinkles by 20%. Like, there's even a thing in there called old man wheat, which I thought was really funny, which helps with wound healing. So, like, as you get nicks in the skin, even as the skin is got like, damage that naturally occurs, even with regards to sun exposure and all the rest of it, we're constantly healing and repairing. It's all designed to help with collagen production, remove, dead skin cells, all the way through. It's helping with healing, repairing, collagen, hydration. Yeah. So again, man, I thought I'd bring some of those stats because that might be interesting.
You've read that makes so much sense. Like, given you wouldn't really just want to pick one either. It's like saying, I'm going to go to the gym and just do bench press for chest. Well, there's so many different things that you can.
This is the way that I'd probably liken it. Like, in terms of looking after your skin, like cleansing the skin is probably, I reckon, probably 35% of it. The moisturizer is probably, they're probably a third. And what's interesting is that maybe even a little bit less, but in terms of just looking after and protecting your skin, the cleanser and the moisturizer are going to do that. In terms of actually really powerfully enhancing, reversing of some of the damage that you've got, that's where the serum obviously makes a big difference.
Nice.
So I mean, I guess you probably could say it this way: younger guys, cleanser, moisturizer. For any guys, sort of 35 plus,
definitely include the serum.
Put the serum in as well too, even if you're just using it a couple of times a week, if you really want to make it last. But yeah, and if you're really serious, and as you get older as well too, daily on the serum. So yeah.
Well, guys, if you are interested, you just have to jump online and Mr Wulf, man, use this code. When you do your checkout, you'll get a discount for that. And I'm pretty sure you'll have to probably hide it from your wives and partners because they might get stuff into it after they see this. Thank you so much, Jeff. That was amazing.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Fantastic.